Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur and development consultant, and Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
Only audit institutions, effective budget tracking, e-government, e-procurement, and curbing illicit financial flow, they are the only practical ways of fighting corruption. So,
all on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A very good evening. Of Behind the Headlines, someone was saying, "Are you back today?" I said, "Yes, I'm back." And after taking I went into hiding because the days are not normal, and so I had to isolate a bit. Now that I'm fine for now, I decided that I must come back. That was leave. You can give it a name. You can say isolation leave, paid leave, hibernation leave, but it is leave nonetheless. But thanks a lot and welcome to this edition of the show. And this Wednesday, 30th June 2021, we are exactly half the mark of the year. And tomorrow starts a new financial year, if you like discussing the fiscal issues. Tomorrow starts a new year in the government financial year. We'll be discussing, we shall find time to discuss that with the people like Ramadan and the rest, the economy and how it will be doing. But that is for another day. Today we are going to be discussing the politics and the science of COVID vaccine, or vaccines if you like. There has been so much talk about the equity of vaccine access. Can Africa get, we are about 44 million people. Can we get to the most vulnerable, to the target people? Can we get to about 21 million people? Vaccine, right now we have not yet, I think we have reached, Dr. Baramuzi and the professor will be telling us where we have reached. Maybe we have reached the 1 million mark, but that is just a drop of water in an ocean of people that are targeted. We will be asking the questions, what is happening? What is our target? We are in a lockdown. What are we doing during this lockdown? The lockdown must not just be a lockdown for the sake of going into leave. It must be with something done, and I'm going to be asking Dr. Baryomunsi and Professor Kalevo those questions of what they have planned as the scientists that government must do within the 42 days of the lockdown. To discuss all these issues, I have the Honorable Minister in charge of Information and National Guidance. Thank God, fortunately, he is also a medical doctor, not just one doctor, but he has a PhD in medicine, so he can discuss for us all the issues. Indeed, he is actually coordinating government response to the COVID pandemic and the crisis. You're most welcome back to the show, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, my panelists, and also good evening, viewers. I am happy to be here once again on Behind the Headlines.
Thank you very much. And you know the reason why we call this Behind the Headlines,
yes,
is we want to get behind the issues that we see. The things that we see, we are told in press conferences, in briefings, sometimes we may not get the details. So we want to get what exactly is cooking in the kitchen. That's why we call it.
The good thing for us in the government, we tell you everything. There's nothing behind. We bring everything in front.
So you mean you have no work here?
No. We always bring everything in front. So
good. Yes. Next to Honorable Baryomunsi is a man who many people know as he is synonymous with the Uganda virus research. He is the Executive Director of the Uganda Virus Research Institute, Professor Pontiano Kalebu. And I think this is the first time you're here, Professor.
For this, yes.
For this show.
Yes, the first time.
Of course, in the studio, I have seen you a number of times, especially when COVID struck.
Yes.
And thank you so much, and we want to commend you for the great work you're doing. And from the beginning, you have been together with the minister and the guys from Ministry of Health, the scientists, you have been at the forefront of leading the country in this. We don't take it for granted. We really appreciate you. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Good. More than all the rest. Because I got a sense that he probably looks at every sample. So if they test 1,000 from across the country, then Professor Kalebu has interacted with 1,000 samples. And so all the strains might mix, and in his hand, I think it's a very dangerous hand to be close to.
Maybe I'm immune now.
I know. That level of mix must make you so immune that now COVID fears you even. Yes. Next to Pontiano is Council Sarah Birete. Before we came on the show, she told me, for me, I'm going to be asking all the questions of the Omutu Awansi. Omutu, the person on the street. Because and yet she belongs to a different class. I think in respect of medicine, she meant that law does not cross into these medicine things and virus things. No. So me, I'm just going to be picking all the misinformation, the fake news, and I will put it here so that the doctors can see. She would qualify to be a fisher, one of those fish, and brought to the cabinet. Thank you so much, Sarah. Sarah is the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance and doing a good job checking government. Sarah, you're most welcome back.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
And finally, we have another professor, but this one is of economics. He has nothing to do with medicine, but nonetheless, he picks the pulse from whatever is happening out there. And if there is any gap, financial, to be tied, he does it so perfectly. Ramadan Gobi, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles. You are the one we should welcome back. We've been here.
No, I'm the moderator.
It's always
I'm the one who welcomes everybody.
I know. You don't want to leave the chair.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And on the line through Zoom, we will be having the Honorable Margaret Muhanga. If the line is okay, we will be having her. She is the Minister in charge of primary health care at the Ministry of Health. And Margaret Muhanga is also the MP for Fort Portal North constituency and a former journalist, or a journalist by training. Let's start with Dr. Barrio Munsi, quickly to bring us into the picture. I know that meetings are held, cabinet, at every level, task forces. First, give us a brief, just in 2 minutes, to bring us to speed. What is the latest progress in the fight against COVID in our country? And if there is anything about, especially about the vaccine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charles. And once again, good evening, viewers. Yes, to bring you to speed, we call this COVID-19, coronavirus disease, which was confirmed at the end of 2019. That's where it derives its name. And this was in China. And we began hearing it, but then it was spreading like wildfire. And in March last year, 2020, you recall that on the March 11th, WHO declared it a pandemic. Pandemic meaning it was an epidemic which was spreading so fast and had reached almost all continents simultaneously, including Africa. And 1 week later, March 18th, the president, on behalf of the government of Uganda, addresses the country and announces a string of measures for us to follow so that we can contain this case. But 3 days later, on the 21st of March, at exactly 1 a.m., a young man from Chibuli here who was traveling back from Dubai presents with the signs and symptoms. When he was tested, he was COVID positive. That was the index case here in Uganda, the confirmed case. And you recall there was a lockdown, a number of measures, and we went through all this. Yes, we lost some people. I think the first case, the first death was registered around July. We went through it, and it peaked around November, December there. But at the beginning of this year, the infection rates had come down, and to the extent that in our hospitals like Morago and the other hospitals, we were not registering a case of COVID-19. And I think that's where I was thinking that maybe we had defeated coronavirus, and the people moved away from the measures which were being promoted. You could hardly find people with the masks, even when the government had given free masks to Ugandans. People started gathering, churches were filling, at funerals you'd get hundreds of people. So life became normal again, not knowing that the challenge of COVID-19 was not yet over. And then we go into now this second wave, which definitely was dictated by that complacency, but also the emergence of variants. Variants meaning the virus had undergone what we call mutation or changes, and you get different strains which behave differently. And unfortunately, the variants which are much more aggressive, they are virulent, they are highly fatal, and a number of Ugandans. And the deaths have increased up to half or 50% of people who have died. They have died in the last 3 months in Uganda. And that's why government again came and announced a string of measures, including a lockdown. Although this is like a partial lockdown, it's not as serious as the last one when you look at how people are moving and also the restrictions which have been imposed. So as we stand today, we still have a challenge. COVID is still a challenge. Our hospitals have many admitted patients. We are still registering positive cases. And although, yes, when you look at the figures, there could be some sort of stabilization or even little decline, but it is still in a crisis mode. And we still appeal to Ugandans that the basic measures, basic as they may appear, like putting on a mask while in the public, physical and social distancing, washing our hands with water and soap or using a sanitizer, and all of these public health measures which we've been announcing, we still appeal to Ugandans to religiously follow and respect these measures if we are going to address this COVID-19. Yes, you also know that at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have vaccines. But luckily enough, the Chinese scientists, after confirming that this was a new virus, they shared what we call the viral genome. The genetic material of this virus was decoded and put on this could download this genetic material, and that's why they began vaccines started coming. And right now we have different types of vaccines which have been produced by different countries and companies which are there.
How many do we now have?
Oh, we have AstraZeneca, which we are using here. We have Johnson & Johnson, which like its mechanism is the same as the AstraZeneca. We have Pfizer and Moderna. The Chinese have Sinopharm and Sinovac. Then the Russians also have Sputnik. So now we have a plethora of vaccines, but all vaccines work, they are effective, they are safe, and they have been authorized to be used on our bodies. And you know that Uganda also started, that our scientists are also working on a vaccine, although they are still in the earlier stages.
I'm going to bring Professor Kalebo on that.
Yes, he will update us. But here we've been using AstraZeneca.
Why are we using only one? Why can't we use a combination?
Well, yes. One, you have to look at the economics. First of all, in as far as the literature and the information available, all these vaccines are safe, they are effective, and we have not seen any vaccine which has serious problems as such. But you have to look at the cost. AstraZeneca, when it came out, they subsidized the cost, the company that makes it. And even Johnson and Johnson, I think for them they announced that they are going to sell it or to give it out on humanitarian grounds. So it is relatively cheaper. Then secondly, these vaccines use different technologies to make them. For instance, AstraZeneca, Johnson and Johnson, even the Russian vaccine, they use what we call vector-based technology, where they use, in this case, adenovirus. They don't use the coronavirus, but they use a different virus, which is the chimpanzee virus, called adenovirus, is the one they use to make the vaccine. And that actually answers whether the vaccine can cause the disease, can cause you the corona. And the answer is no, because you are not being injected with the coronavirus. You are given a different platform, which is not corona. When you look at the Pfizer and Moderna, they are using a new technology where they extract what we call messenger RNA, an extract from the genetic material of a virus, but not the virus. And it's the first time vaccines of that nature are being produced. I think it's China, which is using a killed or weakened virus, the Sinovac. For them, they kill the virus and inject you with the coronavirus, but that is the traditional technology which...
That's the traditional technology of most vaccines. Is that how they made for polio, yes, measles, diphtheria, whooping cough, and all that?
Traditional vaccines. But the nutshell, despite those different technologies used, vaccines, when they are being developed, they have to look at safety. Are they safe? And they have all answered the question, yes, they are safe. Are they efficacious or effective? Are they able to elicit an immune response that when you are injected with this vaccine, can the body react by producing antibodies which will protect you? And the answer is yes. Okay. So where are we as a country? The challenge, and people have criticized us, why are you not vaccinating everybody? I have said several on different shows. Yes.
Doctor, we are going to come to the challenge,
yes,
and I'm going to put it down as a major point to come back to you on.
Okay.
But I want Professor to support whatever you have explained, because one of the things that I want, but there is the myth of how do you make it? Okay. Where did AstraZeneca come from? Why are we using it? You know, I need you to be in congruence on that, so that our people out there can understand that and then throw away, rub off this, you know, myths from their minds from now after this topic. That's what I want us to do.
So
the challenge will come.
Yes.
Definitely, I will bring it in the next round.
So you want me to start, or Professor?
Let Professor start off, and then, but you will be supplementing each other, because this is your area, and I want us to learn a little bit more. Professor, Dr. Baremusi talked about the safety. It is only 65%, and you need to correct me where I am wrong, even on the figures. It is only 65% efficacious or safe. I would want, you know, Putinic, but then someone will say, before they even finish that statement, that I prefer Putinic, that Putinic has not been maybe approved by World Health Organization. Why is World Health Organization not approving the one of China or the one of Russia? That's for example. So take us through that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think, as the Honorable Minister has mentioned, when you are developing a vaccine, safety is the first thing you look before talking about how effective it will be. Safety is so important. And the development of vaccines goes in stages. There's what we call phase 1, phase 2, and then the phase 3. And in these early phases, it's mostly looking at safety. But even before going into humans, they try to test these in animal studies, again to look at safety. And safety is very detailed. What will the vaccine do? Yeah? What will the vaccine do to the different organs of an animal? They'll look in the liver, they'll look in the brain, they'll look in all the systems to make sure that the vaccine is not doing any harm. If a vaccine did any harm, it will take us back many years ago, many years backwards. So science, and this is why I really appreciate the science, the way they have regulated these vaccines, in that most of the vaccines that we have, people have used them millions, but we don't find a lot of safety issues by the time these. And the other one for COVID, what people need to know, apart from what the Honourable Minister mentioned, using the messenger RNA, the other approaches have not been new for COVID. For instance, the Oxford group that is using the chimp adeno, they have worked on this vector of the chimp adeno for many years. They have used it in different vaccines. They have used it in testing for other infections. So they had some safety records of using this vector. But of course, now for COVID, it's being used in the largest number of people. But as they're doing it, again, they're studying how safe vaccines are. But that said, even if you had 1 or 2 out of thousands, that's a big concern. That's why partly it explains the vaccine hesitancy. There are occasions where there have been some rare side effects with some of the vaccines. And then globally, they started what they call the vaccine hesitancy movement.
Yes.
Which was global, and it went to many countries. It was very active against the rotavirus, rotavaccine. Rotavirus causes diarrhea in children, and some people thought that these vaccines caused some very serious side effects in humans. And this went around. And eventually it was found that actually it was not true, but it caused vaccine hesitance. And in fact, vaccinations in some of the developed countries, even for vaccines that we know work, started going down because there was again that global vaccine hesitancy. Those are not so many, but when they go out into the population through the social media and all that, that caused the problem. But the other problem that I think that came out with the COVID that caused concern was again when, for instance, AstraZeneca came on, some countries started using it, others did not use it, others started using it, and then they withdrew, then the clot issue came in. Yeah. That caused some issues.
Tell us about those.
About the clot.
You know, lay bare those issues and you know, cure our fears, the fears of the public out there about those.
Yeah, the clot issue was very side effects of the vaccine that is associated with the platelets and all that. But it was so rare that people are saying the benefits of vaccination much outweigh the risks. And that is so important for public health. And the other one is that if you got vaccine, the COVID itself, there are more chances of getting the clots. Actual clots and is one of the effects that we see with people who have vaccines. No medicine, no vaccine is 100% safe. Nothing is 100%. Even your aspirin you take, but it's what are the benefits as against the risks. Overall, for anybody doing public health, you'll see that the benefits much outweigh. And it assures us, like now, since we started vaccinating, generally the vaccine has been safe in our population. So safety is very, very important for people who are developing vaccines, and they are very, very rigorous. There are international regulations, there are international steps for people doing the science, but also for COVID, many of the approaches that are being used are not very new. They have used them before. So I want to assure people that the vaccines that we have are safe. But of course, as I said, there's nothing that is 100% safe. That's why even as they roll out the vaccines, they continue looking, pharmacovigilance, looking at what are the possible, anything that comes out that could be unexpected is recorded as we continuously learn using these vaccines.
Look out for, apart from just the pain, apart from some people saying I got some mild headache for about 2 hours when I got the first jab, the second jab, I had nothing at all. There are some of those. Someone was telling me that I got the day after, is it the day after or the second day, I got some bleeding, unexpected. I had not bled at all through the nose, and I was scared. I reported it. Are those some of the, can you share with us some of those that people should look out for?
The most common ones are the site of injection, some pain that comes after the injection. The people who have felt fatigue. You don't feel, you feel you are a little bit fatigued, yeah. And people say, I don't have the usual, some has been mild fever, others has been a little bit higher temperatures, some have had some headaches. A lot of these effects are expected. They come as a result of our body reacting to the vaccine, inducing an immune response, especially what we call innate immune response. It's called an innate immune response. And it causes some of those effects, fevers here and there, feeling a little bit unwell. But otherwise, I've not, unless new data that had these very serious effects. But the people have had quite some high fevers and they've had to stay in bed for about a day or two. But they have taken Panadol and the rest, and they have recovered. The rare ones are so rare. I've mentioned about the clots, which have been rare. There's what we call anaphylactic. That is a reaction that comes, as a result of, again, it happens with anything you can have. Your body reacts in a very abnormal way. Again, it is quite rare. Sometimes people ask you, do you react to, there are some vaccines that have been made using, for instance, as they are developing them through egg embryos, are you reacting? But it's not this type of vaccines. So there are a few questions depending on the vaccine that they ask you to probe to see whether you can have such adverse reactions as a response. But we have not had those. So in summary, really, our the effects that we have seen have been mild to moderate, and they should not worry, and they're expected.
Okay, I want one question before I bring in the panelists here. I want one question on the issue of the fast speed of creating the vaccine, and then the issue of the protocols. The protocols being followed, I will bring to Dr. Baryomunsi.
Yeah.
But on one of the causes or one of the drivers of suspicion of the vaccines was probably the speed at which they were created. That in the past, many people who were talking said, we grew up knowing that polio took vaccine for so many years. Many of our siblings, our brothers and sisters, even got crippled, and they would tell you, that one is polio. He didn't get an accident. He is a cripple, he is lame because of polio. and so many years to get it. Measles, similar, that it would take usually about 2 to 3 to many years. In fact, you know, of course, Pontiano, professor, you know that you have been working on attempts to make vaccines for on HIV, which has failed up to now over 30 years. And so people were saying, how is it possible that for corona, they made it within less than a year or just within 14 months? And that is what was one of the drivers. So tell us about that.
No, it was amazing, the speed at which the vaccines were developed. But there were a number of factors. First of all, before we talk about the technology, the COVID virus is a little bit easier to develop a vaccine compared to HIV.
Why?
COVID, who get infected, you recover. The majority of people, it's few who go down with the disease. And what you recover because of your immune response, the body fights it. So there is an immune mechanism that can fight this virus. Your body gets the antibodies, the T cells, and you fight the virus. The majority do fight it. But for HIV, for instance, I've gone to the extreme. Nobody recovers from HIV. Anybody who gets HIV, eventually, very few long-term non-survivors, but most of them without a drug, the body cannot fight HIV because it is complicated. So you can see that for HIV vaccine, you need to go to work to beat nature. But for vaccines, we just want to mimic nature. You understand what protects you against this virus and for this COVID than for viruses like HIV, because if you induce a good immune system, you can fight or prevent the infection. So those two viruses and some of the other viruses are quite different. But it was unprecedented the way this time everyone worked together. A lot of funding was put into vaccine development, and a lot of brains coming together. But that said, a lot of what you see working for COVID was not developed during COVID. It was developed much before. The AstraZeneca vaccine that uses a chimp adeno. Our colleagues, I know them very well, colleagues in Oxford, developed it many years ago.
They
maybe
expected
20 years ago. They have used it, that chimp adeno, they have put in TB to try TB vaccine, they have put in HIV to try HIV vaccine, they have put in Rift Valley to try. So this time they put in the corona, part of the corona, and they tested it. They were successful. But otherwise, the platform, what we call the platform of the chimp adeno, has been used before. If you go to the the Russian vaccine, they have used the adeno 5 and adeno human. Those are they are human adeno viruses, adeno 5, adeno 26. Again, these have been platforms that we have used before. In fact, interestingly, we have also done here some trials using for other viruses, using some of these platforms. So they were not new to us. But for this corona, when they put in a part of the spike, the vaccine was able to work. So the platforms have not been new. Messenger RNA, they have been working. That one has been a little bit difficult in the past, using messenger RNA, because when they used it in the past, it easily gets degraded, and it can cause some immune reaction. But not long ago, they started finding a way of using messenger RNA so that you can use it and it's not degraded. Not even before COVID, that technology, in fact, we at Uganda Virus Research Institute, we had started working with other colleagues at Imperial College to design an RNA vaccine against fever. And I have a student doing his PhD on this project using messenger RNA for Rift Valley. We started using it about 3 years ago, before even Corona came in. So people had started using these platforms. Then when Corona came in, and it was recognized, as the minister said, the good thing, the sequences were easily shared, and people started designing, they were able. And luckily, again, I think inducing this immune response works very well in protecting against this infection. So that platform, the speed of getting the corona vaccine has been helped by research in HIV, in TB, in malaria. That was already in motion. And the scientists who have worked on this, the Moderna, for instance, the Moderna vaccine, some of the scientists who have worked on it, we have worked with them in HIV for many years.
So you know many of these.
At the Vaccine Research Center as for COVID.
Which brings me to another question. Is our vaccine almost near? If that is the type of progress that has been made. Are we about to announce something?
I can't say when we can announce, but I can tell you that the efforts.
Are we testing something?
The efforts, and I have to applaud the government and the president for the support in that, because as I have said, coronavirus vaccine is not as complicated as an HIV or TB or malaria. So I think us working, our scientists at Makerere University and the Uganda Virus Institute are using two concepts. Yeah, one is what the minister mentioned, inactivated, and I have a colleague, Dr. Jennifer Serwanga, who is trying to grow the virus. They're already growing the virus. They will inactivate it and then work with colleagues at Makerere.
It is not a virus. So if a vaccine is called,
and then,
but Ramadan, if a vaccine is called Ramadan, it is good news, as opposed to if it was a virus called Ramadan.
Yeah. Then another concept is trying to get a vector. Yeah. And my colleague, Sheila Balinda, is working on a project to identify a new adeno vector. And we have worked with our Wild Center, or Wildlife Center, to get viruses from chimp to design a vector that we can use. But I've told my colleagues we need to have plan B. If the vector fails, then we can have another person's vector, but we insert in our own viruses that we have grown here, and we insert them in this vector. So 3 approaches. Because I can say, looking at what others have done, and the success and the speed, we have hope that our scientists will move forward. But I can't give you timelines of when this will happen. But I think it's a very good, important development.
Okay, thanks a lot. Dr. Baramusi, there is one of the major debates has been, and one of the myths around the vaccine, the AstraZeneca that we are using here, has been people who allege that the other person caught the virus, died. The other person, after the first jab, that then you hear when there is a funeral, someone has died, that do you know that X actually had also taken a second jab and then fell sick. And people believe, and you have to help us understand why that myth, that actually the jabs also cause problems, which brought me to a number of questions. One of them, is that so? If it is not so, from science, tell us what could have happened. Then the question I was asking is that, which I shared with some friends from the US and UK, that there is a protest, and we needed to know why we are not following that protocol if it is